Alright, let's talk about feeding your boas. We're going to do a little feeding video here today, but before we do, I'm going to talk a little bit about it. A lot of guys got questions about what size to feed your boa. I mean, you know, if you got a small boa, a medium-sized boa, a large boa, you need to know what size rodent to feed it. And the general rule of thumb is you know, after the boa eats, you want there to be a noticeable bulge in the stomach. It shouldn't be the rodent shouldn't be any too much bigger than the widest part of the boa, but you know, when he eats that meal, it should be a noticeable bulge. It shouldn't be a ridiculous bulge. It should just be noticeable. You should be able to see a slight bulge, and that's pretty much the general rule on the proper size of feeding your rodent, feeding your snake, your boa rather. But you know, the two options you have out there, of course, is frozen thawed or feeding live rodents. I only use frozen thawed. There's plenty of benefits to using frozen thawed. It's a whole lot cheaper. I mean, you have a medium rat here this size that'll cost you $5 at a local pet store, where you'll pay not even half that if you buy them frozen thawed. If you buy them frozen thawed, you don't have to worry about, you know, insects or bugs or any kind of problems or sicknesses they might have. You know, all that stuff gets taken care of when it's frozen. So they're cheaper, they're easier to maintain. Preparing your frozen thawed, that's a big thing. The only way you want to get your frozen thawed rats ready to eat is just take them out of the freezer, put them in a tub, something like this is what I do, and then you just let them sit out, let them thaw out naturally. My first experience with frozen thawed, I actually put a mouse in a plastic bag in hot water to thaw it out quick, and when my snake squeezed it, that thing exploded. There was guts and intestines all over the place. It was disgusting, and it stunk. And there was guts and intestines all over my snake. I had to take them out, clean them. I mean, half the head was in the snake's mouth and guts all over the place. It is nasty. Do not thaw out your rats any other way than just letting them sit out. Once they sit out and once they've thawed out, right before I feed, you know, if you want to put a little heat lamp over them to warm them up just to get the boa striking at them. Sometimes I might just sit it on my heater that I have in my room for a little bit, for about 5 minutes right before I feed them. And that's about that. So live, if you want to do live, you can do live. I mean, the choice is yours. But you deal with live, you got a possibility of your animal getting bit, getting some kind of injury. You got a lot of problems. It's just not worth it. The only time I ever feed live is when friends or family come over and they really want to see it. I might get a live one, and if you decide to do that, just be careful. Make sure you monitor the snake. Make sure you monitor the rat or the mouse, so that way the snake doesn't get bitten. All right. Next thing we talk about is how often you feed them. And what I do is, today we're going to feed all yearling boas. All right. These boas, the majority of the boas we're going to feed today were born in about 2008. So we'll take a look at their sizes, and that's what we're going to feed today. But my females that I'm raising up to breed, I feed once every 7 days. That's it. No more. Ever since they were born, I've been feeding them once every 7 days. The males, on the other hand, I only feed the males once every 15 days. So I skip a week. Every other week I'll feed the males. Just because I don't need my males big. My males do a perfect job breeding at a small size. So if you're just a pet owner who wants to have one boa, and you want a small boa, well then I'd recommend you get a male boa and only feed them every 2 weeks, and you can keep them at a relatively small size. I have one here that we're going to feed that he's a 2006, and I've only been feeding him once every 2 weeks for years. And you're going to see his size. I'll point him out as we're feeding him, and he's relatively small. So if you're interested in having a boa constrictor, but you don't want a 6, 7, 8, 9 foot boa, go with a male. Feed him once every 2 weeks. If you're looking to get a nice big boa, get you a female and feed her once every 7 days, and she'll definitely put on some weight for you. Sometimes you might have a problem when boas don't want to eat. It's very rare. I've had my collection for a couple years now. I've never had a problem with a boa not wanting to eat. Sometimes when they're babies, you might have to feed them live just so they get used to striking, and usually you can transition them right over to frozen thawed. But you rarely have problems. If your boa's having a problem eating or not wanting to eat, there could be some underlying health issues that you might want to take a look at. When I feed, as you're going to see, I use tongs. A lot of guys like using their hands. I just don't like getting bit. That's my personal preference. So I use tongs. I use tongs to feed them all, and that's how it is. Some people talk about feeding outside the enclosure. To me, it's really not necessary. For me, it would be too much of a hassle. I've got 15 boas. I got cages everywhere. Everybody eats in their cage. I've never gotten bitten taking my snakes out of the cage. Have they struck at me before? Yeah, especially when it's feeding time. They can smell the rats in the room, so you got to be a little careful with that. Again, that's why I use the tongs. And the only time they're not going to eat, that you don't have to worry about, that you shouldn't even feed them anyway, is when they are in shed. If you see their eyes are opaque and it looks like they're about to shed, I'll just skip feeding them for that week. Some of the younger boas, they'll eat even when they're in shed, but usually when they get older, they won't even want to touch food. So just spare yourself thawing one out and having to waste one. Don't even bother pulling one out of the freezer for them or getting them if they're in shed. So with all that said, I know I kind of talk fast. Let's get to feeding some boas, all right? So basically, use some tongs, and I can knock out a whole rack within 5 minutes, pretty much. That's a 08 female snow boa. And just wait for them to touch, and there we go. And that's it. I'll leave him in there, close the cage, and move on to the next one. So 2008 male triple het. He bred this year. He bred a female. She is definitely gravid. And like I said, man, you're rarely ever gonna have a problem with boas wanting to eat. Pretty much everything. Anytime you put a rat in there, they will eat. That's a good sign of healthy boas. If your boas are aggressively eating the way you see them doing, it's a good sign that your boas are healthy. Now this right here is the male that I was talking about. This is a 2006 male, and you see he's a little guy. He's not that big. I feed him once every 2 weeks. And sometimes I wiggle it around just so that, give them make them feel like they're actually doing something, But he's a little guy, 2008. I'm sorry, he's a 2006. And where's this person? Is there a snake in here? There we go. That was another albino. And she's in here. Come on, girl. There we go. Alright, there we go. And we'll grab the next tray. Alright, well, I'll leave you with that, and I'll get to feed in the rest of them, but come to the website at redtailedboa.net and come check us out. Have a good one.